Some songs are just songs. You hear them on the radio, you sing along, then they end. But for a performer, some songs become something else. They stop being just words and a melody. They become a mirror. The artist looks into the song and sees his own life staring back. It's a rare thing. It's a powerful thing. And for Elvis Presley, one song became the story of his life. He didn't write it, it wasn't written for him. But when he sang it, especially in the last years of his life, everyone in the room knew. He wasn't just performing, he was testifying, he was telling the story of the deepest love and the deepest pain he ever knew. He was telling the story of Priscilla. To understand why this song hit him so hard, you have to go back to the beginning. You have to understand what she meant to him. It wasn't just a marriage, she was a project. She was an ideal. He met her when she was just a teenager in Germany. He was a soldier, but he was already the biggest star in the world. He was lonely. He missed his mother, who had died not long before. He was surrounded by his guys, his Memphis Mafia, but he felt a void. And then he met her. Priscilla Beaulieu, she was young, she was innocent, she was beautiful. And she seemed to be everything he was missing. He saw in her a chance to create the perfect woman for himself. He could mold her, he could teach her how he wanted her to dress, how to wear her hair, how to do her makeup. She was clay in his hands, he was building his ideal partner from the ground up. This wasn't a normal courtship, it was an obsession. He would call her from America, write her letters. He convinced her parents to let her move to Memphis, to finish high school while living at Graceland. Think about that. A young girl living in the home of the world's biggest rock and roll star, under his rules, under his watch. And it was a fairy tale, and it was a cage. This period was the foundation of everything that came later. It was the period where he built what the song calls a mountain of love. It was huge. It was all-consuming. His love for her was real, but it was also a very specific kind of love. It was a controlling love. He put her on a pedestal. She was his living doll, his private creation. She wasn't supposed to have her own thoughts or her own ambitions that conflicted with his. Her job was to be there for him when he came home from making movies in Hollywood. Her job was to wait, and she did wait. For years, she waited for him to be ready for marriage. He had his career, he had other women on his movie sets. That was part of the deal. He was Elvis Presley, she was expected to understand. The world revolved around him, and she was a planet in his orbit. When they finally did get married in 1967, it was a rushed affair in Las Vegas. It wasn't the grand celebration one might expect. It was quick, it was managed. It was almost like a business transaction, another part of the Elvis Presley image to maintain. But they were married. The promise was fulfilled. Then came the next part of the story, a part that is central to the song. The song says, "You gave me a child to give me the reason to live." Exactly 9 months after the wedding, Lisa Marie was born. For Elvis, this was everything. He now had a family, he had a wife and a daughter, he had his own little princess at Graceland. Lisa Marie became the center of his universe. She was proof of his love for Priscilla. She was the one pure good thing in a life that was becoming increasingly complicated and strange. He had his fame, he had his money, but the love for his daughter was something different. It was grounding, it was real. It gave him a purpose beyond the stage and the screaming fans. But a child doesn't fix a broken foundation. A child can even expose the cracks. The marriage was not what Priscilla had imagined. She was still living in the Graceland bubble. Elvis was often on the road, especially after his 1968 comeback special reignited his passion for performing live. He was back to being the king in front of thousands of people every night. And Priscilla was at home, alone. She was a young, vibrant woman who was essentially a single mother. Her husband was an icon, not a partner in the traditional sense. The life he had created for her was starting to suffocate her. She had been molded into his perfect woman, but she was starting to realize she didn't know who she actually was. As she had no life of her own, her identity was completely wrapped up in being Mrs. Elvis Presley. He was surrounded by people constantly. She was isolated. He had his adventures. She had the walls of Graceland. The mountain of love was still there, but now it was also becoming a hill to climb. The song mentions this, that a hill to climb came with a mountain of love. The daily struggles, the loneliness, the dawning realization that the fairy tale wasn't real. Priscilla needed more. She needed to find herself. She started taking karate lessons. And it was there that she met someone else, a man named Mike Stone, her instructor. For the first time, she was being seen as a person, not just as Elvis's property. She had conversations, she felt a connection that was about her, not about her famous husband. She started an affair. This was the moment everything changed. This was the moment the hill became an impossible mountain. When Priscilla finally told Elvis she was leaving him, it shattered his world. He could not comprehend it. He was Elvis Presley, men wanted to be him, women wanted to be with him. People did not leave him. He had given her everything, in his mind. He had plucked her from obscurity, made her his wife, given her a child, a home, a life of luxury. He saw her leaving as the ultimate betrayal. He didn't see her loneliness or her need for her own identity. He only saw his creation walking away. He saw it as a personal, brutal rejection. The pain was immense. It was a blow to his ego, yes, but it was also a deep wound to his heart. He truly loved her, in his own way, and now she was gone. The divorce was finalized in 1973. They remained friends for the sake of Lisa Marie, but the family unit was broken. The dream was over, and Elvis was left to process this profound sense of failure and loss. He was the king of the world, but he couldn't keep his own family together. This is where the song comes in. He started performing it around this time. When he stood on that stage in his jeweled jumpsuit, looking like a god to the thousands in the audience, he would sing the words. And the words were no longer just lyrics written by Marty Robbins. They were his autobiography. Let's look at the story the song tells. It starts with a life of hardship. Born in the heat of the desert. Elvis was born in a two-room shack in Tupelo, Mississippi. He knew poverty. He knew struggle. The song talks about being a cowboy and a rover. That was his life. He was always moving, from town to town, on tour buses, from movie set to movie set. Never truly settled. His life was a constant journey. Then the song lays out a litany of pain. You've given me sorrow and heartache and trouble and pain. For all his fame and wealth, Elvis's life was filled with it. The pressure of being an icon, the loss of his mother at a young age, a wound that never healed. The creative prison of his Hollywood movie years, the isolation at the top, the physical toll of the endless touring. He felt he had been given more than his share of burdens to carry. But then the song shifts. It talks about the good things, the blessings that made the pain bearable. A mountain of love and a hill to climb. That was Priscilla. The immense, overwhelming love he felt for her was the mountain. The challenges of their life together, the work it took, was the hill. It was a perfect metaphor for their entire relationship. Grand and beautiful, but it was also a struggle. And then comes the line that was the absolute core of it for him. You gave me a child to give me the reason to live. This was Lisa Marie, plain and simple. When he sang that line, his voice would often fill with a raw, genuine emotion. In the chaos of his life, his daughter was his anchor. She was his justification. She was the one thing that made all the pain and all the sacrifice worthwhile. Then the song delivers its final devastating blow, the part that made it the story of his divorce. But this time, Lord, you gave me a mountain I may never climb. This was the breakup, this was Priscilla leaving him. All the other problems in his life, he could overcome them. The poverty, the grief, the pressures of fame. He had climbed those hills, but this was different. This was a mountain. A towering, impassable obstacle of heartbreak. Losing his family was a pain so profound, so fundamental, that he felt he might never get over it. It was, in his eyes, the single greatest tragedy of his life. The song goes on to detail this specific pain. She took my child. Now, Priscilla didn't. Take Lisa Marie in a legal, cruel sense. They had a civil divorce and shared custody, but from Elvis's perspective, standing alone in the empty rooms of Graceland, it felt that way. His daughter was no longer living under his roof full-time. His little family was gone. His home was broken. The feeling of her absence was a physical ache. When he sang that line on stage, he was channeling that ache, that feeling of a father who no longer gets to see his child every single day. It also says he's been deserted by the woman I love. That's exactly how he saw it. Not as a mutual separation, but as an abandonment. He had been left. He, the king. And that feeling of being forsaken was a deep source of shame and anger for him. The song gave him a way to express that feeling. It allowed him to portray himself as a victim of a cruel fate. A good man dealt an unbearable hand. When he performed this song live, it was pure theater and pure truth. He would often introduce it by saying something like, "I'd like to sing a song that tells the story of my life." The audience knew what he meant. They had read the headlines, they knew about the divorce. When he sang it, he would act it out. He would clench his fist, he would raise his eyes to the heavens as if pleading with God. The orchestra would swell behind him, creating a sound as big as the mountain he was singing about. It was an epic performance of an epic pain. Linda Thompson, his girlfriend for several years after the divorce, confirmed it. She said he believed that song was written for him. He felt every single word in his soul. He poured all of his hurt, his confusion, and his love for his daughter into his performance of that song. It was his personal anthem of heartbreak. It let him be vulnerable in front of the world, but in a way that was still powerful and dignified. He wasn't crying in a corner. He was standing in the spotlight in his cape and turning his personal tragedy into a towering piece of art. The song captured the specific narrative, he told himself, that he had struggled his whole life, had finally built a perfect family, a mountain of love, only to have it cruelly taken from him. It doesn't tell the whole story, of course. It leaves out his own affairs, his controlling nature, the reasons Priscilla felt she had to leave to save herself. The song is not an objective account, it's a feeling. It's his side of the story. It's the pain of a man who got everything he ever wanted, except the one thing he couldn't control, another person's heart. Every time he sang it, he was reliving the breakup. He was reliving the moment his perfect world crumbled. He was processing his grief in front of a live audience, night after night. He was turning his private hell into a public spectacle of shared emotion, and for those few minutes on stage, he wasn't just a singer. He was a man with a broken heart, telling anyone who would listen about the mountain he couldn't climb. The story of a love so big it became a burden, and a loss so great it became his defining tragedy. The song was You Gave Me a Mountain.